If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then this, the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and each week I'm joined by a special guest. This week, returning for probably the 10th or 11th time, is Kristian Stott. We'll come to Kristian in a second. What is the property show and why should you be watching the stat show? Well, the British are obsessed with the property market. And as I say most weeks, that when the land registry details come out, it's front page news. But the land registry is looking at sales that took place 8, 9, 10 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide are looking at sales that took place 2, 3 months ago. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at last week. So therefore, if you want to know the inside track of the property market, its general direction, the house prices and everything involved with it, then buckle up and listen to the next hour where we tell you what's happening in the property market. This week, we are looking at week 26 of 2025. Can you believe it? We're halfway through. Unbelievable. And week 26, for those who don't want, is Monday, the 30th of June, all the way through to include Sunday, the 6th of July. Kristian, good to have you back, mate. I know it's been a few months since you've been on the show. Hope you're well. Ladies and gentlemen, Kristian used to run a large estate agency chain in the Midlands, and now he has a number of fingers and a number of pies with property tech and is very well thought of in the industry. How's it going, mate?
Fabulous. Lovely to see you. Thank you for having me.
No worries, mate. It's always a pleasure. You always give great value. So, ladies and gentlemen, anyone that's not watched the show before, as I said, it's roughly 1 hour. The first half an hour will be looking at the UK property market, looking at various different stats, with Kristian and myself giving our insight and thoughts to that. The second half of the show is where we focus on a town or a city and really deep dive to see who the best estate agent is. This week, we're going to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. If you are not from Grimsby or Cleethorpes, you might want to turn off on that section. However, we are going to be using a piece of software that analyzes the different estate agents in those towns. And if you're an estate agent who suffers from overvaluing or cheap fees from other agents, and you are a better agent, this bit of kit will actually show you whether you're any good and how much better you are than your competition. And let's be honest, it's really hard to differentiate yourself from the competition, but this, if you are as good as you think you are, will show that. And data is fact. You can't argue against it. So without further ado, Kristian, let's start the first part of the show and let us go and look at the national stats. Okay, so what we always can you just confirm that you can see the graphs, Kristian?
I can see it loud and clear.
Beautiful. So what we always do here, ladies and gentlemen, is I just spend 30 seconds looking at the stats. We always start with listings because that's the top of the funnel. And this week, the year to date, we're on 967,600 listings to date, which is 14.5% higher than the 9-year average. And you can see on the screen here how the different years are coping or what's happening. We listed 36,876 properties with an average asking price of 428,000. And on the screen now, the white line shows us 2025 compared to the 17, 18 and 19 and 23 and
Excuse me.
24 years. Kristian, thoughts on scores on the doors with regard to listings?
The white line is generally a touch north of previous years. And I think that we are seeing, God, I don't dare say this, Chris. I think we're seeing a lot of stock, coming to the market. I think we've had this conversation. I think we've done two this year, and both times we've been looking at just those, small uplifts. It's not like it's a huge spike, but those small uplifts in new stock to the market. There you go. There's an interesting one. Stock can be good because I think it's true to say that the market was a little bit stock starved for a while. But I think, too much stock is a bad thing. I don't know if we're at the point of too much. I think the last thing we said was, was ist ein Glut. Where is it at? Just out of interest, has it been climbing week on week this year as you've been doing the show?
Well, you can see the graph here. So okay. So what we do is we always look at the stock levels on the evening of the last day of the month, stroke the morning of the next month. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the 30th of June, stroke first morning of July the 1st, 758,000 properties were on the market for sale. All the other yellow lines are the same end of June's, early July's. So you can see, you can compare and contrast on that. What I would say to you is this, is that the last time we had a property market crash, which was 0708, that was at 1.3 million.
Yeah. Crazy times.
Okay.
Okay.
So therefore, if you take it in isolation against 22, that does look concerning. If you look, the long-term average in 17, 18, and 19 and 20, again, you can take with a slight pinch of salt because we were just coming out of COVID at this time,
Hmm.
is around that 650 on average 650 mark. So we're running an excess of an extra 100,000 properties, which shows us that we have to be realistic with the pricing, and we will bang on about this constantly in the show. Um, am I concerned? No.
Okay. Good.
Am I aware? Yes. And it's something that needs to be kept an eye on. I mean, we will come to the number of sales. Interestingly, the percentage of homes that are selling versus coming off the market, when I say selling
Hmm.
to exchange and contracts, is broadly in line to what it was pre-COVID.
Do we do weeks on market?
We don't on this show.
No. Okay. And
Uh,
we definitely don't do viewings to sale, do we? Which is really, I think when you collect that from agents, it's really interesting data, the viewings to sale, but okay.
um, th this, I mean, we again, nice segue in. We normally do this later in the show, but these are the new stats for June.
Mm.
Now, we do have to take this with a slight pinch of salt because we will be getting more exchanges or more withdrawals coming through because we're only halfway, we're only the first week into July.
Beginning of summer now, though, Chris. We've got quite a couple of months
No,
ahead.
no, we're waiting for the stats from June to catch up because finding out whether they exchanged or withdrew, there's always a small proportion of numbers. The things that exchange contracts in the last week of June probably won't show in the June figures until the middle to the end of July,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, with 20A. However, and this is a big however, more they also find out more withdrawals come through. So the thing that is not is there's going to be, I mean, again, let me just show you the numbers here. I haven't put the June numbers on this graph because they are down here. So we
Yeah.
as I said, they always at the end of the month, in the month following, we have to we I don't publish these until the end of the month because we're waiting for it to catch up because they're down here. But the percentages doesn't really change, and that's the first time that we've gone sub 50 apart from
Well, it's funny because if you look at the
yeah,
months of, yeah, say, look at the months of really low scores, those are our unavoidable transactions, aren't they? Where we've got April 20 through to the middle of the summer, 20, July, August.
yes, that was COVID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then what you're
Right?
pointing to October 23, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
okay, and that right. So that spike there is you always get a spike at Christmas. So that's the
yeah,
Christmas spike in 24. That's the Christmas spike in 23. Uh,
yeah,
and that was the first time buyer stamp duty spike.
yeah,
Okay. So again, we just ignore the spikes. I suspect it's at 49. I suspect she'll come back up to 51. But is this, look, the general trend here was slightly upwards.
yeah,
We've had a slight trend downwards. However, you could say some of that peak was rushed through because of the first time buy. And
yeah,
you shouldn't take this. A swallow doesn't make a spring, and 1 month sub 50 doesn't make end of the world. So we just got to keep an eye on that. I would say, well, we'll just find out what the numbers tell us. But there are more houses on the market, but there are more houses selling. But the proportion of houses that are coming on the market are still the same. It's around that 50-53 mark. 53-54% of homes that come onto the market in the UK end up moving.
yeah.
So I think that's a
At
bloody
the
embarrassing.
moment.
At
But
the moment.
stock now isn't moving now, is it?
Yeah, but
Stock now is moving soon.
let's just have a look. Withdrawals are high.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
not. Okay.
Yeah.
So we just have to be aware of that. I think the biggest takeaway here is, and we bang on about this constantly in the show, is this is are you listing to complete or is listing for just to have a board outside the house so your competitors don't have it? I think it's the biggest embarrassment of UK estate agency is that we would rather not lose our ego than lose the listing and nurture them and get them the next time. Anyway, anything else on listings before we move over and talk about price reductions?
No.
Okay, so we've got the June figures in now for the price reductions, and 14.1% of stock was reduced. The week itself, 27,514 price reductions. But as I said, we're looking at around that 14%. So that's around one in seven houses are being reduced on a monthly basis. And the average price of a property being reduced is 416. Anything on
So
that?
I'm not gonna talk about that one so much, but I think that if you look at those metrics, um, more stock coming to market with a high level of price reductions. You talk a lot about, approaching the market with the wrong price. Um, Sometimes I think that um, the two things can be confused, i.e., the wrong price in a seller's market versus the wrong price in a buyer's market, but very different things. But I think those metrics are interesting.
I mean, here's some data which I learned from Simon Gates, who got the information from Rightmove
Very brilliant man.
and his top man. And non-reduced properties are 1.3 times more likely to be marketed as sold subject to contract and half as likely to fall through and take a third of the
Sorry,
number.
I didn't hear what you said to begin. Excuse me, interrupt. You said non-reduced properties.
Non-reduced properties over the last
Yeah,
5 years
yeah,
are 1.35 times more likely to be marked as sold subject to contract,
yeah,
half as likely to fall through, take a third of the amount of time to actually get a sale agreed,
yeah.
and almost half as likely to be lost to the competition.
Yeah, and I think you've got some really good data to support that. Obviously, that you said at the beginning there, I think that was Rightmove data. In your 20 EA data, you've got the asking to achieve variation on agent by agent, location by location, and I think that shows you quite clearly that the agents that value accurately um, make more money and get more
Yeah.
sales.
I mean, again, this is a stat which I got from 20EA that if it takes less than 25 days to get a sale agreed,
Mm,
the chances of that property completing is 94%. So therefore,
mhm.
we have a 6% chance of it falling through.
Yeah,
If a property takes more than 100 days to get a sale agreed,
yeah,
chance of that sale completing goes from 94 to 56%, which means
no,
you have a 44% chance of falling through.
yeah, yeah.
So if you are going to overvalue it, get fucking price down within a month.
It's an interesting one that because if you go back to what we were just saying, I think it's probably true to say that all agents value accurately, but not all agents have a very honest and sort of strategic conversation with the seller. And I think that, when you look at these prices, because it's pretty hard to value inaccurately these days. It takes a bit of doing, does that? But I think it is easy to persuade a vendor or to be persuaded by the vendor. You often talk about it being the agent's fault that stuff comes to market too high. And I think the sellers have a huge part to play in that. And I guess you've got agents that are willing to sort of slam the briefcase shut and walk out the room if the seller's expectation is inaccurate. Um, but yeah, those are really interesting statistics because agents are doing work for nothing.
I was at a conference with Tom Panos, and he was
Right.
giving some great scripts. And again, I know that's a mucky word to some people, but as long as it doesn't sound like a script, he was giving some great scenarios on how to persuade a homeowner that, yeah, we'll try it at this. This is what the comparables are saying. Let's see what the market is saying. We'll try it at that. But I'm telling you, and if we don't get it, and then he used certain phrases, not to get a price reduction, but to realign with the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. So yes, you can overvalue. You can try at a higher price, but don't let it sit there. Right. Let's move on to gross sales. And this week we have sold subject to contract 26,550, and that's this week compared to the other 26 week 26 is going back to 2017. The average price of the property sold is 369. We will do a comparison with the listing price in a second. Accumulative gross sales is 690,645, which is 7.7% higher than last year and 15.1% higher than 17, 18, and 19. So let's just
That's
remind,
a healthy number, that, isn't it?
well, again, so listings are up 7.5% on 17, 18, and 19, but sales are up 15%.
Mm,
But the important thing though is this: net sales are only up 10.7.
mm.
So we are selling more, but we're falling through a greater percentage. We'll come on to the fall throughs in a second. There's the white line, and the white line is 25. The turquoise line is 24. Pink line is 23. So, last year was decent, and and you can see here that we are now on a steady downward trajectory. Can't say that word, trajectory, with regard to the number of sales throughout July and August. That dip there is the August bank holiday, so just be aware of that. But basically, I would suspect that the number of gross sales is going to be coming in. I'm going to probably suspect in July and August around 24, 23,000 a week. Okay, depending.
Yeah,
I think
can't
that's
argue
fair.
with that.
But remember, we were at 20,000 last 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and again, to say that we are, remember, gross sales in 22, we hadn't had the Kwarteng budget by then. So, okay, to say we're only well, 4,300 off, that's really, really good. But our fall throughs are higher, so do bear that in mind.
Yeah.
And as I said, the average price is 369. Anything on gross sales before we start looking at the price difference between the two?
Not really, actually. It's nice that thus far in the year that number seems to be holding its own. I think um, it'd be interesting to see what that looks like in 3 months' time.
Okay, so this graph here, the red line shows us the average listing price, and the blue line
Yeah.
shows us the average sale agreed price. So that's the average asking price when the property went sold subject to contract. Now, do we know what it sold for? No, we don't, but we do know, and stats just go back for about 15 years. On average, the difference between the average asking price at sale agreed and the price achieved is always between 1% and 1.5% below the publicized asking price. So just bear that in mind. The gap's nice and tighter.
Yeah.
Remind ourselves what the tight is 16%. Why is that? Because all the London people are now going on holiday. And as soon as you take out the London properties, the average drops, and it will continue to drop all the way. This will narrow. It narrows there. Look, it narrowed there. Here we go. Look, narrowed. Then it spikes up in September. It spikes up in September, and we will have another spike in September when all the people who come on holiday from Provence and the south of France and Italy come back and put their houses on the market, and that will scoot right back up. Okay.
Other holiday destinations are available.
No, but that's it.
Um,
Honestly, that that okay. Look, let's just remind.
Dear.
So
With a
seven.
copy of Peter Mayle's book in their hand, hey?
No, but look, year to date, 967,000, and that gap there is basically 5,000 homes in London that will come on the market in the same week.
Yeah.
Always does, always happens. Okay, so we'll just see how that plans out. Let's just remind ourselves a couple of extra graphs here.
Is this a new one? I looked at this in the deck you sent me. I don't recall this one.
Something we bring out every once in a while just to tickle the fancy
Ah,
of you all.
okay.
So the blue lines are just pure listings, and the red line that glows in yellow is the sales agreed expressed as a percentage of listings. So if you've got 10 listings and you sold 8 that month, that's
Hmm.
80%. That's the way it
Yeah.
works. So these are more of a national figures. It just gives us a flavour of the
I
market.
think these are really important when you look at the market stats you've got now. You know, one element is that for a period of time behind us, we've been a bit stock starved, and the market has been hungry for more stock to come, and actually sales will continue to rise with good prices. The other one to watch is that, if you're starting to accumulate stock on your books and having to work a lot harder to offload it, that's painful. Higher resource overhead, you've got disgruntled vendors. So I quite like this graph. I think this is quite an important graph.
Do remember, ladies and gentlemen, that these graphs can be used at evaluations and internally. Um, to download them, you go to YouTube. In the description, there's a link there that you can click on and it will download the JPEGs. What I do ask is those you please don't use them on social media without my express permission. And the reason I say that is my daytime job is I'm a property market ghostwriter for lots of estate agents around the UK, and some of them do like to use these graphs as an add-on, and it just wouldn't be fair for you to use them if someone else in your town that does pay me uses them. Okay, so please don't use them without express permission, because the only people that should be using them is my clients. Let's just talk about this. Is updated. No one's seen this for the June. What percentage of the properties that you had on the market in June did went to sale agreed? And that was 15.28, which is just slightly below what it was last month. But again, if you look, the shape is almost identical. Ignore the dip because that's COVID. It all goes up. We have a little wobble down, and then it wobbles. And then that's the October lump, and then it drops down to Christmas. Up we go. Look, it's like an oscilloscope. The shape. I will love the way the shape is always identical. I spot these things. It's just amazing. I know, I'm
Mm.
being boring. There's the price difference. They are standalone week 26. And we've just done that, the percentage gap. Let's move on to fall throughs. So this week, the number of fall throughs is 6,664, which is quite high. Let's just hold on, pull that back. There we go. Hold on, Christian, sorry.
So I've been hearing that a little bit, just that people are struggling to get stuff over the line.
This is not getting stuff over the line. This is fall throughs, which in essence is the same thing. Just looking at it in a different way.
Yeah,
That's the right. Okay, but don't panic just too yet because the number of sales will. Let's just remind ourselves what's in agents' sales pipelines. So sales pipelines are really good at 496,000. This is the end of June going into the 1st of July. So
yeah.
so agents' pipelines are nice and fat, but
Well, or taking too long. You choose.
okay, both are valid. Both are valid. Yeah, swine. There, look, just last couple of weeks I had a slight dip up, but again, it's just a swallow doesn't make a spring, as they say, or
Mm.
summer. Let's just look again. I think this is a better graph and more of a tempered graph. What percentage of sales pipeline falls through a month? And if you notice that we are around, as I said, that just under 5.5. So that is the sort of levels of pipeline fall throughs that you should be getting on a monthly basis. If you're above
Yeah,
that, you're not doing so well. If you're below that, you're doing really well. Okay.
it's going in the right direction, that one, isn't it?
It is. The general trend is downwards. But
Mm.
again, let's be honest, this is the COVID. I wonder if what that would be if the COVID, that's the COVID bounce. That's everyone happy and glorious. And then just generally it's remained steady and boring there. 25.1% of properties, as I said, falling through 6,664. Anything on that?
Big number. When was the last time it was that high? 18. Okay.
Let's just have a look. Hold on. I must get that done better. But again, I take that with a slight, just be aware of. I think that's just the actual numbers that's on a graph. Those are the Christmas dips it always happens. So I wouldn't worry
Hmm.
too much about that. Right, net sales. This is gross sales less fall throughs. And again, we're on a general trend on a downward direction, as we would expect throughout the summer. We had slightly higher fall throughs, which mean our net sales this week were at 19,866. Just to give you an idea, last week it was 21,000, the week before 21,700, the week before 21,600, the week before 21,900. So, there is a slight dip there, But again, as I said, let's go back to the old analogy, one spring don't make a summer, or whatever the bloody analogy is. Excuse my French. So let's just keep an eye on that one. And it's a damn sight better than it was in 23, which is the pink line. Interestingly, we're following the 24 line. Let's
Mm.
just remind ourselves, gross accumulative net sales, 528, 800, 6% higher than last year, and 10.7% higher than 17, 18, and 19. And that's it in week in isolation. Anything on that you want to talk about?
Not really.
Okay, just nice to
Because
say.
I think, as you said a couple of times, it's something to watch at the moment. There's no kind of major signals, is there? But
No, it's Groundhog Day. We've just got to see
yeah,
the trend. And you work as agents, your job is to get a bigger share of the pie. Don't let if the tide rises and the market's doing well, you ain't done that. That's because the tide's done it. It's whatever percentage of the tide you have that's the important. Um, there's the net sales. Right, couple of extra bonus ones. Gross sales as a percentage of listings and price changes as a percentage of listings. Right, we'll
okay.
just finish these off and then we'll go
Well,
to
just graph 26. Um,
a
that
standalone.
is,
That's a standalone week, remember?
yeah, um, it's being worked, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, nationally this year, 40 point something percent of listings have been reduced.
Mm, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the stat. Okay. Right. That's exchanges versus withdrawals, but doesn't include net. I don't publicly do this number until the end of the next month. We've done the percentages already, though. Um, yeah, that's properties for sale. That's properties pipeline. Pound per square foot, as you know, I'm a massive fan of the orange line, which is the pound per square foot at sale agreed, and that nipped up to 346. Why is that important? Because it matches the land registry in 5 months' time with a 98% correlation. So therefore, if you want to know what's happening in the property market and you want to look at the land registry, just follow that orange line and it'll tell you exactly what's going to happen to the land registry 5 months in advance. So therefore, the last few months, the orange line has been going upwards, which means the land registry will see a nice steady growth throughout H2, half year two. Okay, just you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Couple of extra bonus graphs. The proportional split between sales on the market and sales pipeline and the actual numbers as well. So again, you can see here that, we are just over 1.2 million homes for sale, stroke sale agreed. Okay. Remembering that there was 1.3 million on the market only in 2008. So nothing to panic about, but be aware of it.
yeah,
Okay. Um, anything, anything you want to say before we go
just
to
said it. I think, Chris, no major signals there, is there? But numbers are creeping up. And I think there's interesting couple of months ahead, whether that becomes actually a sort of flourishing market with plenty to choose from, maybe a little bit of price adjustment, but actually lots of sales agreed, or whether stuff starts to wither on the vine a little bit. Um, don't know yet, do we?
We don't know. And as I said, the stats, it's like a super tanker. You kind of know what's going to happen to it. It's a general trend, the short and medium term that you need to be looking at. Anyway,
Mm. We
we
might get some dramatic news events in the next couple of months.
no, we don't
Which
need that. We don't need any of that. No, no, no.
no,
Don't wish that.
I'm not wishing it, for God's sake. Uh, just suggesting it might influence our decision making.
Anyway, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the first part of the show. And now we are going to go to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. So let's go and have a look at the stats. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are using a bit of kit called Insight. Insight is one of many platforms that the firm 20EA use for estate agents. They have business generation software and propensity to sell platforms, but this is just data on the this is Rightmove Plus on steroids. Okay. 20EA do not pay me to highlight this product. They do give it to me for free, so I'm just making you aware. And in return, I get the stats, which you've already seen in the first part of the show. And also, I use this piece of kit to analyze different towns or cities. The Insight platform, believe there is a free version, but the stats only go back 3 months. But again, it gives you a flavor of what it's about. And then there is one where I'm not going to mention the price, but they do a 10 district one, which is 10 postcode districts, which is very reasonable. And then they have a regional one and a national one. As I said, it's Rightmove Plus on steroids. What makes it different? It goes back 5 years plus the year we're in, and it also cross analyzes and comes up with stats that make you look awesome. So if you're wanting actual stats that make you look awesome as opposed to a pie chart, because you know I don't like pie charts, but actually want to prove that you are a damn good estate agent, then whether you're from Grimsby and Cleethorpes or not, you need to be watching this to see if this bit of kit is good for you. Please do not mention my name. I'm not on commission. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, my daytime job is I help estate and letting agents attract landlords and vendors to their agency using property data. Okay, because you're at a party, Kristian, someone finds out you're an estate agent, and the first question they say to you is, and this is not scripted, how's the market? Don't they? Yeah,
Oh, it's great.
they do. And if I looked at most of your social media, ladies and gentlemen, most of it would just be listings, 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 or waving your willies, saying how awesome you are with your pie charts and your testimonials. If you want to attract homeowners to you, everyone is obsessed about the property market. So why don't you talk about the property market? Being a property statistician, lots of data comes across my desk. Whose growing market share is not of interest to homeowners and landlords, but it is to estate agents. Therefore, this is our third year of doing this. We pick a town or a city each week and we analyze it to death and see who the best estate agent is. That's why we're doing this show. So if you are a Cleethorpes or Grimsby estate or letting agents, buckle up for the next 20 minutes. Don't watch this on a mobile phone. It's way too small. It's going to be spreadsheet heaven. And myself and Kristian are going to analyze who is the best estate and letting agent in Grimsby and Cleethorpes. Let's go and have a look. Shall we go? Here we go. So for the purposes of this, Grimsby is DN31 all the way through to DN37. Those of you who don't know where Grimsby and Cleethorpes are, it's northeast Lincolnshire, so just on the other side of the River Humber, just down a bit from Hull, and it is in the county of Lincolnshire. I think it used to be South Humberside, so they changed it to northeast Lincolnshire, but it will always be part of the ceremonial Lincolnshire, God's own county, obviously. So that's where the G-Town Grantham comes from, where we are based today. And you've been to Grantham as well, haven't you, Kristian, a number of times?
Oh, and can't wait to go back.
Indeed. We will get the marching bands ready for you at the train station. Okay, ladies and
Oh, it's the
gentlemen.
sausage roll I'm looking forward to.
That's what they all say. Ladies and gentlemen, my family have butchers going back to 1912. So well-known butchers in the town. So if you ever go in there, and they do cook baps for not a lot of money. Right. Anyway, let's get back to the job we're not paid to do, which is analysing Grimsby. So we've done DN31 to DN37. We're looking at residential sales first. And we, as I said, 1st of the 1st, 2020 to the 7th of the 7th, 2025. We're looking at new instructions. And in that time, 19,856 properties have come onto the market with an average asking price of 175,600. What I do is I'll talk, and then Kristian, as you know, you just come in when you see something that is of interest. So we always might as well start at the top. Let's go look at Crofts estate agents. Okay, and we can see here that their market share seems to have drifted downwards from around the teens down to around the 10% mark. However, it looks like you had a bad summer in 24 and pulled your socks up since and leveled off at around 12%. Average price 172, which is very, very similar to the average in Grimsby and Cleethorpes.
You get quite a lot for your money, don't you? I
You
was just looking
certainly,
on their site.
certainly do, my friend. Okay. Jackson, Green, and Preston. Looks like their market share is growing from around the 10% mark to around the 12% mark. So it looks like, by the sounds of it, we've probably got three estate agents slugging it out for, oh, actually, no, nearly four, actually. Right. Roost estate agents. Their average price is 202. So they're probably more of a Sainsbury's knocking on the door of Marks and Spencer's food hall. Um, Looks like 23 and 24 is drifting slightly, but it looks like you've been picking your socks up in 2025 for your listings. Let's go look at levels. So levels nice and steady at 10% around 20. They come from up there. They're now part of the work part they were bought out by Belvoir, then Belvoir were merged with the property franchise group. So it looks like you had a bad back end of 23, early 24, and pulled your socks up since. So that's really, really good there, guys. Joy Walker. So it looks it's yellow. It probably doesn't come out particularly well. Looks like you had a bad 21 and 22. You put your socks in 23. There's been a slight drifting downwards throughout 24 and early 25. Let's go and look at Argyle estate agents. Ad price 191. Looks like something changed in 24, didn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
across that space by the looks of it.
Yeah, it looks like something happened in 24. So whomever that is, because normally it's people, that's really good. You need to be proud of that. Pike,
Interesting price there. That look, yeah, if you just flick between those two, you've got a £40 a square foot difference. Um, it's quite interesting that so that's at the higher price at 191 versus 154. So
do
I think it's an interesting market over there.
do remember with pound per square foot, it's it's good at the bigger the scale, the better it is. The closer you get, the less it's relevant with the pricing.
Mm.
So Pygate and Crone, part of the Lincolnshire Massive Estate Agency operation under Kevin Scrupps and team. Yeah, it looks like 2020 was good, but you've been okay. It's treading water. You're not going down.
They're brilliant estate agents at Pikers.
Martin Maslin, dropping slightly. DDM,
Okay.
yeah, a bit of growth there. Okay.
Hmm.
Reed Rains, okay, slight slippage there. Purple Bricks,
So Purple Bricks carry quite a bit of stock in that area. I don't know what postcodes you've put in. Did you say that when you introduced it?
DN 31 and to 37. So
Yeah.
basically, there's a few postcodes. You've got two towns. You're driving through Grimsby and you wouldn't actually know that you're in Cleethorpes, apart from the
Right.
sites as well. It is like two towns that touch each other. Um,
So it's interesting that Purple Bricks carry a lot of stock, but
I,
their market share has been sliding a little bit, hasn't it?
yeah, okay.
A little lot, actually.
BHM. Now, what we're going to find now, ladies and gentlemen, is that the lower numbers are going to be quite spikier by the very nature that the numbers are lower. So it looks like you bounce between 2 and 4, guys. Strike. So again, they finished in 24. So again, Meteor Homes. Looks like a good 24, but I don't know what's happened since. EXP, 2 to 3%. We'll just whiz through this. Okay, that's interesting. Farrows. Looks like you've had a cracking new year. Let's just go down. Okay, let's just have a look and see who's shaking and moving for the last 12 months. So Crofts are still number one. Right, okay. So it looks like Farrows are doing well. EXP.
Okay.
Okay, I can't remember if Martin Maslin was in that. That's good, Martin Maslin. Well done, guys. Although it is only the first.
Can you look at them all at the same time? Yeah, there we go. Who's that red one there? Is that Argyle, is it?
Pygate and Crone or Argyle. There's two yellow.
Yeah. And the orange one. Who's that? Jackson Green and
Argyle. It's
Preston.
Argyle.
Right.
So I'd love to know what Argyle are doing because they seem to be picking their socks up.
And they're called Argyle Estate Agents.
Just have a quick look online. Let's just have a quick look while I move on and look at some other stats. Okay, let's just see if there's any. And knowing the area reasonably well, I don't think there's an upper quartile here. Posh houses. That's more the Wolds, and that tends to get covered by Louth estate agents. But we will just for what's name and giggles, let's put in, I don't know, £500,000. Let's just see if there is a market. I doubt there's going to be that much. Knowing, okay. So 459 properties. Crofts are still up there. Let's go 750.
Argyle marketing's nice. Good photos
Okay.
in the main.
So that's interesting that Crofts, oh, fine, here we are, Fine and Country and Martin Maslim and Savills. Again, that's 130. That's only been 137 properties come on the market in the last five and
Y-
a half years in the
Yeah,
750 upwards range.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Not
anything?
much of a market, really, is it?
No, it isn't. No, I wonder if I don't know if Fine and Country have come from Lincoln or something, or
And that,
from
what have we
Hesselton.
got? Up to 2 mil, 1 to 2. Yeah. Okay.
There you go, like 35 properties between 1 and 2 mil.
Yeah.
Okay, right, let's move on. So we are looking at 8th of the 7th, 23. So basically, we're looking at the last 2 years, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's some stats here, and let's just tidy all this up for you because this tells us an awful lot. There's a lot happening here, which, if you can spot it, shows the difference between the good agents and the bad agents. So we'll just pull that across. There we go.
85.7% SSTC. It's quite a good number. The Tigers, is it?
Hold on, my impatient one.
So Argyle was one of the ones that had grown and interestingly have a high percentage of exchanges
Well, we're going to come on and talk about that in a second, okay?
and low withdrawals. Might explain a lot that.
There we go. Just got to get it right, mate. I want it to look good for the ladies and gentlemen. Right then. Okay, so there's a lot happening here, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to take this nice and slow because there is some pure gold in here, right? You're all looking at your new instruction and your new instruction market share and your sale agreed social contract, but again, selling doesn't mean it's exchanged, right? So this is where the true magic. It's these four columns here: exchanged, exchange percentage, withdrawn. There we go. Let's make it a bit nicer for you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here we go. If you add up the exchange percentage and the withdrawn percentage, they add up to 100% on every single line. You see, a property will only leave an estate agent's book for one of two reasons: exchange or withdrawn. So therefore, in the last 2 years, Crofts have exchanged contracts on 59.71% of the homes that they exchanged on and withdrew 40%. Okay. Jackson's exchanged contracts on 65, Roost at 66, Lovell's at 62, Joy Walker at 70, Argyle's at 75, DDN
76.
59. And look,
The Argyle's numbers there are really quite clean, aren't they? If you look at their number of price changes versus the competitors in that space, and you look at their exchange ratio, um, they they had that uptick on the graph that we looked at, and I think the stats there probably point to why.
you see, Let's just work this on out. If I was Argyle estate agents, and quite obviously I'm doing well here, but I'm exchanging on 75.88%, and I was up against Crofts at 59.71. Argyle's can say that we proportionally sell. You have a 27.1% greater chance of moving with us compared to Crofts. I'm not criticizing Crofts, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Facts is facts. Okay. But there's other agents, the average in Grimsby is 57%. So you can all say Jackson Green says that, 65.15 divided by the average, which is 57.25. So Jackson can say you have a 13.8% proportional greater chance of moving home with us compared with the average Grimsby agent. And that's where the true gold is that normally the biggest estate agents have the lowest exchange rates. And that matches with what Crofts, I'm not criticizing Crofts, but Jackson Green, which is just on their nibbling away, are really, really good. If Crofts exchange contracts on the same sort of level that Jackson Green exchange contracts, in the last 2 years, you'd have had 15 more exchanges per year. And when you consider that the average fee is probably going to be, I don't know, about 2 grand in,
Yeah,
no, okay, no, okay then. So 15 times, we'll go 2 grand. Then, hold on, 50,
90 grand, isn't it?
15, sorry, hold on, 15, no, sorry, hold on. 15 times 2 grand, it's 30 grand.
Oh yeah,
Crofts could have earned 30 grand more if they exchanged at same percentage as their arch nemesis, Jackson Green and Preston. Interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
That's per year. Okay.
Yeah,
There's some good numbers in here. There's some not so good numbers in here. We'll just let everyone have a quick look at the numbers. Okay, let's look at the fall through rates. The average is 1 in 5. Who's got some high? Jackson Green really good at 16%, as is Roost. Argyle's at 13. That's really good. I'm liking Argyle's here.
yeah. I think the metrics are pretty clean.
Okay.
They're just handling a lower volume. They don't have a meet the team on their website, whereas Crofts do, and Crofts actually sort of present themselves as quite a big, solid team in that area. Whereas it's hard to see with Argyle. And I think my point being that these stats are fantastic, but they're only truly relevant when you bring the P&L in. And so you don't know in terms of profitability, which is the better business, but certainly their numbers, they're handling a lower volume and they're completing on a higher percentage of the stock that they handle.
Good price changes. Some huge price changes here. I'm just wondering here if we've got some overvaluing or yeah, these are big numbers. Being that 52, I mean the average is 40% in the UK, so the price reductions are high, but by the looks of it, they're all roughly the sort of same sort of levels. Let's move on. Average time to sell. Argyle's average time to sell is 95 days.
Yeah.
Jackson's are at 162. Crofts are
Withdrawals, if you look at the gap in withdrawal between Crofts at the top there and Argyle, you've got what 40.3 versus 24.1. So in terms of diesel, time, photos, marketing, viewings, etc., it's a lot of work to not get paid for.
It certainly is. Right, let's move on and look at some more. And again, this is new. This is new instruction growth. Look, there's Argyle's. They've grown 35% in the last 12 months compared to the 12 months before. Levels are doing well at 12, DDM at 12, Meteors are dropping, and so Pigots are dropping, and Jackson Green Preston are dropping, Rooster
Mhm.
dropping. Yeah, look, isn't that interesting? Look,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Right, okay.
Be
Let's move on.
interesting to see if Argyle, as they grow through improve stock volume, whether they can hold the metrics for the withdrawals and the price changes. Because if they can, then tidy, isn't it?
Interesting. Right, okay, let's move on. So what's happening here? What 20A have done is looked at all of your exchanges for the last 2 years. All right, this is what's happened, Grimsby and Cleethorpes agents. They've looked at so the number of new instructions is they just put the bigger agents at the top, okay? But the number of instructions is irrelevant in this metric. They've looked at all of your exchanges. And what they have done is this. Again, it's not the easiest thing to explain, but I have a skill set of turning numbers into something that helps you as estate agents grow your business. This is my daytime job, ladies and gentlemen, taking market stats and turning it into something that will attract vendors and landlords to you. Right, okay, so the orange line is the percentage difference that you over between what you listed the property at versus what it came on the market. So all of the exchanges that you put onto the market, sorry, all the exchanges that have taken place in the last 2 years, they date stamped it when the house came on the market, looked at what their AVM, automated valuation model, Valpal figure, was for the house, and looked at what you put it on the market for. On average, Crofts overvalued by 0.51. The top six there are all nice and tight, aren't they? At sub 1%. That's lovely to see. So by the looks of it, the big six agents are not overvaluing. DDMs and Pygats are. Meteor slightly. Purple Bricks are vastly overpricing. But nice and tight there. Okay. So that's that orange line there. Okay. How much did you overvalue it at? Next, what price did you achieve on the property from the original asking price? Let's remind ourselves, lots of price reductions here. Okay. So this is what percentage did you drop from the original asking price? And Crofts took on average 5.92, Jackson Green Preston 6.6, and you can see the numbers as you go down. So what I'm seeing here is that no one's really overvaluing compared to the AVM, but the AVM might be off, but it looks like it's off for everyone. And then price, you're all roughly knocking the same amount off in the top, around that four or
Not to speak overly scientifically, but in a market with a very limited top end, personally, I would expect the AVM to be on point.
yeah, that is quite surprising. You're right. Okay. Looks like the AVM is off, but you could say, well, that means it's a load of rubbish. It's a load of rubbish for everyone. It's the difference between all of you that makes a difference. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like percentages. So we move on to the next column that says average listing price. If everyone put on a £200,000 house, what would everyone achieve for it? And you can see here that the agent of, Pygats, whilst they're slightly overvaluing at 2%, are getting £2,388 more than the average Grimsby agent for a house. Argyle's are getting £1,943 more than the average Grimsby Cleethorpes agent. And you can see the different percentages in there. So we will just let the numbers speak for themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Um, but I would say here is that the AVM slightly off, but not end of the world. And none of you are really overvaluing, and you're having to duck your prices down. Okay.
There's a couple there
Yes.
where the numbers are extreme, Chris. Perhaps if you were to order it um, by variance to average price, I don't know how you get those there at 17,000, 14,000. Actually, new homes agents, that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So the
sorry,
new
Pattinson at 19, unless they're just predominantly auction.
yeah, okay. So auction are going to go for less anyway, and the AVM model doesn't know it's rubbish because that's normally the stuff that goes to auction. And I won't put it in because
That's
you've got
not that's not true.
no. No, the AVM doesn't know that the property's shit when it goes to auction, does it? It just assumes it's a bog standard 3 bedroom. If
Well,
everything,
modern method wouldn't pretend that it was not good stock. It's the vendor circumstance that drives that, not a tree growing out the roof, as Jamie would call it.
right? Okay, let's just see what stock levels have been like because this might be useful. Hold on, let's just get rid of that. Hold on. Stock on market. So stock levels, you can see there that in 2020 there was 1,774 properties on the market at the end of June, and that went down to 1,100 in 21, and has slowly. So now there's 2,185 properties for sale. It's a lot of property, a lot of property. But again, it's the difference between the two. Um, so that was interesting to see. We've already done time on market, but again, look, Argyle's are pricing them right, so they're getting them through. So there's no instruction to sale agreed in the last year, 91 days. And we can just go through those. We'll just whiz down those so you can see how you will have performed.
So, so 260 days. Oh,
Jackson and Green taking on average 260 days, as you say. So again, that's new instruction to completion.
God, that's stressful.
So again, I'm being a number one agent. Why did? Oh, but hold on a second. Look, they're only taking 87 days when the average is 90. Ooh, okay, no, 118 days on average to sell it. Yeah, wow. Um, this is looking to me, especially with Jackson Green, is that they're not instructing solicitors until probably the survey's been done. So therefore, you could say that Jackson Green have the best sale agreed to completion timescales, but they're obviously not instructing their solicitors. I think the big thing here is to look at the total time. 260 days versus 173 days. That's massive. Right, we're on the final run. Let's go and look at the lettings and the average rent in Grimsby in the last. Let's just move that. There we go. The average rent in
How,
Grimsby.
how can it take that long to sell a house, Chris? I don't. You can build one quicker than that. Um, anyway, it's not our conversation, is it?
Certainly not. Right. Okay, here we go. So the average rent in 2020 was £523 per month. And let's see what it has been this year. Ba, ba, ba. Nearest, damn it. We'll just go one more. And there we go. 687. Okay.
Low, isn't it? Look at open rent. My goodness me.
Now wait. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you all panic like headless sheep when purple bricks are having 4 or 5% of the market. That is the silent killer of lettings. Open rent.
Yeah, value proposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to scare the hell out of you, all right? 20EA analyze every single year the stock that open rent put on. And for the last 2 years, 51.2% of open rents listings were previously on the market with a high street letting agent. Most of that growth, landlords are leaving. They're not setting up, they're just doing it themselves. And that is basically down to most letting agents are really rubbish at managing their landlords. You only ring them up when there's a problem. You're paying minimum wage to the most awesome people in the world, which are your property managers. And basically, all those property managers are doing is ringing up your landlords with problems. They think it's so easy just to whack the property on Rightmove and I'll deal with the repairs. You know damn well 170 pieces of legislation. The Renters' Rights Bill is a huge opportunity for letting agents to attract, to retain and retract landlords. So, I mean, my daytime job, ladies and gentlemen, is if you're a letting agent and you want to attract more landlords and retain the existing ones you've got, then maybe we should have a chat. I don't have a client in Grimsby and Cleethorpes, and I can only work for one agent per town. So if you are in Grimsby and Cleethorpes and you're looking to grow your letting agency and make sure that you don't lose it, because let's look at the stats. Here we go. Look at this dropping. Galaxy of Homes, love that name, Reeds Rains. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone's dropping. And that is because open rent. So if you need some help or guidance, let's go look at our friends Argyles. Not that we've ever spoken to them. Okay, they're not bad, but they're still Joy Walker, they were good on the sales. We'll take it down to number 20. Yeah, everyone's suffering, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, suffering.
If you just you go to open rent website, I don't want to comment on open rent per se because brilliant business. But you know, the person who is being asked to make that commitment evidently cannot see the difference. And then you just go to the pricing and services page, and all of a sudden, it seems abundantly clear that in the absence of value, they're choosing the lower price. They don't get the difference between the two. You can't blame them. It's a fair call. Um, Crying shame.
And that's the point, ladies and gentlemen, is you have to prove value. So if you're looking for data and science and other techniques to retain and attract landlords and also attract nice medium, middle range, upper range properties, then do reach out to me. Everyone in Grimsby should have been sent a copy of this video if your numbers are online. If not, and you've missed out, reach out to me. Kristian, thank you for your time today, your insight. It's been exceptional as always. And we'll see you next time for the next Stat Show. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Kristian.
Cheers, Chris. Good to see you.